Oh, see, I am already messing up. Let me find my comments. Let me find my. That's a big fish. I need you. I really need you. Come here. You are big. You are big, big, big. Jesus Christ. I wish you guys could see this fight. Oh my God. That's a big, big fish. Big fish. Big, 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 big. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode for the Everything Kayak Fishing Podcast. Tonight on Gramps Live, presented by American Legacy Fishing, Fish Texas Kayak Trailers, and everybody else that I'm partnered with. Got a special guest tonight. One of my favorite people in all of kayak fishing. Super, super nice guy. You just can't know better people. But I've been thinking about, working on my list of who I'm going to have on, and gone through and, had a lot of, other folks on. But then I was like, you know what? Had dinner with this gentleman a while back. It was like somebody I just got to get on live, because sometimes, in times where, there's a lot of stress going on in the world and a lot of things going here and there, you often find yourself, either caught up with whatever's going on in the news, or, jobs, or anything and everything. And there's a lot of stress that goes along with it. And when I sit there and think of people that I'd want to actually have a conversation with, who's just one of those guys who just makes you feel at peace, brother in Christ, Mr. Guillermo González.
Hey,
G,
everybody.
G, what is up, brother, man? How are you?
I am happy to be on the show with you.
Man,
I'm
I have.
sorry that it took us a while to make this finally work, but it's been a busy last couple of weeks, and I'm glad we were able to nail down a time.
Yeah, I mean, well, busy. You guys down south are, obviously, if often running to the races. We've already had 2 stops on the Bassmaster Kayak Series, one out in Havasu, one by a buddy of mine who I just saw again the other day at a boat show, Mr. Drew Gregory. Decided to hop on an airplane, leave all this cold northern weather behind, and go out and fish, and just decided to go ahead and win the thing. He can go out west and catch some smallies and do what he does. And then you guys went right back after that, straight down in Florida to the Kissimmee chain, which, I mean, I know that's like a destination area for a lot of people in the country, especially all of us northern folks. And you had a pretty good time. Tell us how your trip out there to Florida went, because I know. Well, first of all, let's introduce you, because a lot of my fishing fam are new to kayak fishing over the last few years. Got into fishing either during COVID, or recent converts into the whole kayak bass fishing thing. Let's start with telling everybody where you're from, where you grew up, and where you live, and just the whole story of the G.
Well, I'm actually Puerto Rican. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and my family moved to the United States when I was about 7.5 years old. And we initially moved to South Florida, to Miami. Growing up, I spent a little bit of time in New Jersey. I really kind of gained a love for bass fishing when I lived there. My dad I used to beg my dad to take me out to the lake, and we would go out, and we would rent a boat out there, and just go out and enjoy the day out on the water. And that's where I really kind of really got the bug for catching bass.
Yeah.
It became really cool. But anyways, I wasn't over there very long, and we moved back to South Florida. And of course, my fishing bug just took over there with just the quality of fishing that we have down there. I did a lot of bass fishing, a lot of saltwater fishing, and a lot of peacock bass fishing as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I had a lot of prime peacock bass canals not very far from my house. So, after school, it was an easy thing to do with my buddies. But anyways, I didn't really start fishing competitively till I got to college. Uh, I did a college bass event as an angler, and I absolutely got my butt whooped. just so bad. And I was like, you know what? I need to get better because I wasn't okay with how badly I got my butt whooped by all these guys. So I was like, I need a way to get out on the water more often. And, that's economical. And I got in a kayak and I literally just forced myself to learn. And that involved going to a lot of lakes that I just really didn't feel confident in, and forcing myself to gain a little confidence in places that I really didn't like to fish. And little by little, I began honing my skills, and I started competing a little bit. I saw, oh, they got kayak tournaments. I might as well enter. Why not? And I started doing that and experienced a little bit of success. And from then on, I mean, I haven't looked back. I've been competing now in kayak fishing tournaments. What's got to be like, man, 12, 13 years now.
Okay, yeah, wow.
So a good while
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because I never I got into kayak fishing because I had a boat at the time. We, a little low V bottom, and I like to, take the boys and we'd hit different lakes and rivers around here in southern Indiana. And then I found this one lake on the Navy base that I work at, but it was super shallow, but it had the giants in it, but it was too big of a pain to even put a V bottom boat in. So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up selling the boat and getting me and the boys kayaks. And this was probably back around 2010 or so. And we started kayak fishing that way. No clue that there was like any tournament stuff on. My brother and I used to fish like team derbs, and the Red Man and stuff like that way back in the day. But we got into kayak fishing just because there was a skinny water lake, but it was full of, in Indiana, 5 and 6 pounders, which, you don't just find those every day.
No.
And so, I got the boys hooked when they were little. And it was funny because I was actually texting Austin Hoover back when I found a picture of him in Chad's book when he was probably 12 or 13. And then pictures of my sons when they were probably about that same age. And they've probably been kayak fishing the same time. But it's funny how people find their way into kayak fishing. And I didn't even know there was such things as tournaments until COVID hit. And they kicked us all off on base because they didn't want us coming on, base during the thing. So I'm like, well, all I've got to fish out of now is my kayak. So I just went by one of the nearby lakes. 3 dudes roll up in kayaks. And I'm like, boy, them fancy rigs. I'm out here in my little Walmart special. And they're all geared out. They tell me they fish tournaments. And I was like, there's kayak tournaments. I think I made it to the KBFNC by the next year. But
Oh, really?
it's funny how, everybody kind of finds their way into a kayak, whether it's economy or just the nature of the skinny water or getting away from other people. But then watching the sport evolve and grow, over the last several years as it is, and Bassmaster, who knew we would see Bassmaster events at the level that you guys fish at. But I love to see it. I've been a Bassmaster Life member forever, and I'm one of the biggest fans out there is. And so I love that you guys actually have places and an opportunity to go out and make a living, or at least pursue the dream and see you guys do your thing. So you at the Kissimmee chain had a pretty good event. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I would love to. It was, if I'm being honest, I did not expect to have a good event. I don't know if you had the opportunity to listen to the awards or anything like that, but I mean, just about everybody was saying, man, practice was so tough. I caught 2 fish in 5 days, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you heard so much of that. But in the back of my mind, leading up to it, I was like, yeah, it's really tough right now because, last week they had this incredibly cold front. And in Florida, those fish don't like that. They don't react well to it at all. But throughout that week of practice, it got hot, and we had like a crazy warming trend. And, I talked to several other anglers in the event, and we all kind of agreed, like, you can't check yourself out of it because it's about to change, and it's about to change really, really fast. So this event is really going to be about being able to stay open-minded and make adjustments with the changes, because I mean, what you had in practice could just be totally different. And to be quite frank, it kind of helped me out because I didn't really have anything from practice. I didn't have anything that I felt confident in. I knew there was one lake that I kind of liked more than the others. So I knew if I was going to figure it out that weekend, I was going to do it there. And so that's what I did. I kept an open mind on that first day, and wound up catching a limit pretty quick right off the bat, much quicker than I anticipated, honestly.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, it wasn't until I ran into my buddy Garrett out on the water that he kind of, him and I chatted for a little bit, and he kind of clued me in on something that might have been going on. I was like, Garrett, if you don't mind, I'm going to go to the other side of the lake, and I'm going to kind of apply what we talked about, and and the rest was history. I actually bought him dinner after the event because that conversation really changed the course of my day that day. And I'm really glad that the rules allow us to do that on the water.
Right.
Because I know, I've had the opportunity to help others, and in this particular case and in many other cases, other people have had the opportunity to help me. And so it's one of the things I really appreciate about the way that our events are set up. But anyways, yeah, the rest was kind of history. I mean, I went and I kind of discovered little things throughout the course of that day. Nothing really that like life changing. I kind of just monitored what everybody was kind of doing on that lake, and I wanted to make sure I was kind of doing my own thing if I could. And the lake was fishing good enough that I could kind of find my own little niche. There was a lot of guys fishing really shallow right on the bank, and with good reason. There was a ton of fish on their way up there.
Okay.
I pushed a little bit back, especially on that first day. I fished, where there was a lot of guys. I mean, it was hard to tell with the depth, with the way that lake set up and the silt, but it seemed like a lot of guys, and even guys that did very well on day one, were fishing in that 1 to 2 foot range. And I was fishing in that 4 to 6 foot range, maybe even 7 at times. And there were plenty of fish going in that direction as they were heading to the bank. So, and I found that even though I wasn't getting as many bites as the guys that were way up shallow, when I did get bit, it tended to be a pretty good one. And so I stuck with it and ended up catching a pretty good bag on day one. And then for day two, I thought, well, it's going to be even warmer today. The fish are going to probably just keep coming. And I did catch them out a little bit like I did on day one, but not quite as good. But instead of moving all the way to the bank, I moved about halfway between where I was and where the bank was, just to make sure I was still around some fish that were getting a little bit less pressure. And that was really the key adjustment for me on day two that put me over the edge and helped me finish second.
That's incredible. And then let me ask, for those of us who've never been to Florida, or even, especially fishing in Florida, I know it's the Kissimmee chain of lakes. How many different lakes or bodies of water do you guys have, like, at that kind of an event to choose from? And then how do you, and I'm kind of reading through some of the questions that people have asked before the show, and then, knowing how many different bodies of water, how do you kind of choose where you're going to start? With you being from Florida, is it maybe like a little home field advantage, perhaps, or experience for being there? I'm sure, but how do you kind of pick out of all the choices where you want to be?
Well, to be honest, my experience on the Kissimmee chain is very limited.
Okay.
I had only been there one other time before for a KBF event. And it's funny, I flew in for that KBF event. I was with Christine and I borrowed a boat from somebody, and I just went to whichever lake she was fishing, and I ended up winning that event.
I'm sure that was a hot topic of discussion at the dinner table.
Yeah, no, it was actually pretty cool. Everybody was really happy for me, and I felt a lot of support. And honestly, like it was a huge confidence booster for me. It really feels like so often, as long as I have like a marginal amount of confidence into where I'm starting, I feel like one of my strengths is I'm pretty good at having an open mind when tournament day actually begins. Like I'm pretty good at being able to abandon any preconceived notions that I have, any notions that I have from practice, whenever necessary, and do something completely different. And that kind of skill set really helped me out when I flew in and fished in that event. But beyond that, to answer your question, there were a lot of lakes at play. And if I'm being honest, I can't even name them all because there
Right.
were so many. I mean, I think it was like something like 10 or so. I mean, a
Okay.
bunch. And they're all connected by little like creeks and canals, barely. And but it's a huge chain. There's a lot of water that's in play. And the way that we initially approached it, I was riding around with Christine in that event. The way that we initially approached it was we started with the big ones first, and just because we felt like, I mean, historically, a lot of those bigger lakes, at least if you watch like some of the older like MLF or Bass events,
Yep. Oh, we
it seemed
study
like,
those like crazy when we're going somewhere.
yeah, it really seemed like those were the lakes that, that people had a lot of success on and some of the bigger fish were caught at. So it was a no-brainer to kind of start there. And then from there we kind of went smaller and smaller. And honestly, we kind of took the what I would call maybe the shotgun approach, where we just kind of went everywhere and we tried to hit as many lakes as we could. We hit about 2 lakes a day.
Okay.
And we tried not to, we tried to pretty much get an idea what each lake was like so that we could figure out kind of what we liked the most without getting too much into the nitty gritty of how we were actually going to catch them, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um,
Now, do you have? I guess a lot of people do this too. It's like if I was going to say, okay, if Abby Abinanza or Jody Queen's fishing, I know a chatterbait's going to be in the hand. If Casey Reed's fishing, I know he's going to have a shaky head. Is there a standard like 2 or 3 baits that is the first thing on your deck that you're like, I'm going to catch him this way and this is what I'm going to know? Or are you like a full on variety kind of? How do you like to start when you're hitting a body of water for the first time that year or even the first time ever?
it really depends on the time of the year.
Yeah.
But um, going into this event, I really, really wanted to make the lipless crankbait bite work.
Okay.
That was like, I was hoping, I was like, it's gonna get hot, so that lipless crankbait bite might actually like not be as good once the tournament rolls around. But man, did I want to make it work. And really I did catch a couple on a lipless in practice and whatnot, but as it went on and I realized kind of where I was going to have to fish, the lipless was just not going to really work for me. I was fishing around a lot of lily pads,
Hmm.
and it's not very easy to run a lipless through the lily pads. So that didn't quite work for me. Now, like all over, throughout the year, dang near always, I mean, if you give me the option, I love to throw a buzz bait. Absolutely love it. I love to flip a jig. A lot of old school stuff,
Yeah.
really. Um, but I'm a fairly open-minded guy too at the same time. So it just really depends where I'm going. On a clear water lake, you might catch me with like, a 6-inch swim bait, especially on like some of like the Ozark style lakes. I really like those style swim baits. Or a shaky head. If you catch me down here in Texas, y'all have a jig and a buzz bait on me almost everywhere I go.
Yeah.
Maybe a square bill. I throw a square bill a lot at all kinds of different times of the year, especially here in Texas. If you ever come to a tournament in Texas, just bring your square bill box because I mean, there's not many lakes where you can't get on a square bill bite down here.
Okay.
But you know, I've got a lot of things that I love to throw, and that's kind of an idea, but it really does kind of change everywhere, and it does depend on the time of the year.
Okay, got you. Now, I was watching some video, and I know that you're a new canoe guy. Are you still at New Canoe Newport? You still rocking the Pursuit this year, or have you made any changes? You know, with the new season, because it seems like everybody gets their new boat at the beginning of the year, and I did some snooping around, didn't see you do any like rigging or uploading. You know, anything new lately? Is what's your current kind of setup, and you know, how do you like to run? Because I know you're one who's more of a need for speed kind of guy versus the spot lock and spotlight. You know, what's your current setup?
Well, I am still running the Pursuit.
Okay.
It's an amazing boat. I love it, and I've little by little kind of been transitioning into the Unlimited a little bit.
Okay.
But my main tournament setup is the Pursuit, simply because I just found a way to make that boat work so well for me. Um, and I'm running that with, I'm actually typically running it with the NK 180 Pro.
Okay.
I did run the 300 in Florida, um, because I knew how much water I was going to have to cover. But honestly, I prefer to run it with the NK 180 Pro because of the weight savings and just the ability to be a little more nimble when I'm loading up and all that. I mean, the NK 300 is an incredible motor, and I love how quiet it is, and of course, I love how fast it is. I mean, it is hard to beat just the sheer power and torque that you get out of that motor. But my favorite motor that Newport makes is still that NK 180 Pro, just because I mean that motor has so much bang in such a small
Yeah.
package. So I'm a huge fan of that motor, and you know, moving forward, I think in the next few events, you're probably a little bit more likely, especially you know at the championship on Lake Fork, you're probably a little bit more likely to see me running the NK 180 Pro.
Okay.
When we come around to 10 killer, I might run the 300 just because I know over there I'll probably want to cover some pretty heavy distances.
So are you doing that because of with the NK300 with a bigger battery so that you can run it at the slower speeds but still go as fast as you want, but then you get more distance? Or what, how big of a battery can you run with your NK 180 Pro?
So with my NK 180 Pro, I'm running a 24 volt 50 amp hour, and on
Okay.
my NK 300, I'm running a 36 volt 60.
Okay, yep, that's pretty much what I
And to kind of put it in perspective, that I can with the Pursuit specifically, because the whole design is so efficient, the sky is the limit on how far I can go with a 3660 with the NK 300. I
right.
mean, I can cruise at 5 miles per hour on the NK 300, barely running any throttle.
Yep.
So my range at 5 miles per hour with the NK 300 on the New Canoe Pursuit, no exaggeration, might be close to 35 miles.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, because I saw one of the battery companies was working on, or they at least have pictures of a 24 volt 60 amp, and I was like, boy, that thing's gonna last like all day and forever.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and on my 2450 for like my NK 180 Pro, I mean, I get some pretty insane run times as well. I mean, I feel perfectly confident doing a 25-mile day with it
Okay.
if I have to.
Now, did I see on your rigging video from last year that you're running a live scope, but it's a through hole? Did I understand that right? Or
I
did
don't
you
think you
use
did.
okay, okay, okay. Because
um,
I was watching something, I was like, he said through hole, but I was like, okay, but then
oh
he
wait, you know what? I think I know what you meant,
okay.
or what you may have seen. So my live scope module, the module itself is inside the boat.
I got you. Okay. So the little
So
black
that
box.
might have been what you saw, and maybe
Oh,
I said
okay.
it in a confusing way.
Because I'm like, I started Googling, I was like, they do have a through hole transducer, but I wonder how. Okay, now that makes more sense.
Gosh, that would be cool if I could run it
Oh,
through the
dude.
hole.
Yeah, because then you just, steer the boat with your motor, and then you're using the bow as your aim the, but yeah, I digress. So are you running a traditional live scope then off of a pole and doing it?
Yep.
Do you find yourself playing with that as much as a lot of people these days, or are you still more, I don't know, old school, I guess is the word. I think I've not got to the point where I'm doing like a Wheeler or Dustin Cannell where I'm you know, chasing fish around in open water like they seem to be doing, whereas I'm looking at brush piles or structure,
Right.
things like that. Seems like it depends on where you're at in that game right now is kind of the difference, makers, at least in the boater world for sure.
Right. Well, I'm still learning the game, the
Yep.
live scope game. I'm not gonna say that I'm like bad at it, but I'm not great at it like a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Like guys like Ewing,
No.
who's so incredible at using it, and a handful of other guys out there in our sport. And I'd like to get to that point, but honestly, it's gonna take some time for me.
I got you. Yep.
Now I do use it. I'm not going to say I don't use it. I do use it, and I have applied it in a few events in the past. But to put it in perspective, in Florida, I didn't even have my transducer in the water
Right.
most of the time. I was just looking at my map, and I had a pretty good idea how deep the water was. But I kind of figured out the fish, especially on those cloudy days, were pretty high in the water column. So how deep the water was never really wound up mattering all that
Right.
much. So I didn't even have my transducer in the water just because I didn't need to. It was just one less thing to worry about or to get hung up on lily pads or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Because I often wonder too, it's like I'm building two different boats this year. I've got my PWR, which back last year I had my NK300 on it. Then of course I pick up an XTR this year because I want to have a bigger boat just to play with, and then have as a second yak for somebody to jump into if they're limited mobility, disabled veteran or whatever. That I have the XI3 on.
All right.
But do you find it like Gene, for example? I know there's some guys that are married to their bow mounts because they're doing that whole offshore thing.
Mhm.
Whereas I think then again, probably more of the anglers like you and still me to that for that matter. We have live scope, but we're still more run and gun, cover water, fish how we know how to fish.
Right.
Have you ever thought about putting on a bow mount and kind of slowing down and fishing that way, or is the rear mount just the way to go and there's really no need to play with anything else?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say I've never thought about it. I had the opportunity a couple or last year. I borrowed Buzz's New Canoe Unlimited with a bow mount, and it was nice. I really enjoyed fishing out of it. I don't know if it's quite for me just yet. Just because I really like to bounce around a lot,
Yep.
and I like to cover very, very large distances, and I like to do it as quickly as possible. Um,
Yeah, it's hard
but
after getting out of a new with the Newport, especially the NK300, and then knowing that I'm going to get in this thing with an XI3 on it, going, come on, come on, let's go,
right,
come on.
all right.
I'm only doing 3 miles an hour. Come on.
Yep. I mean, exactly. But I do. I mean, I do have an appreciation for what the bow mounts are capable of, and
Yeah,
I honestly, like I said, when I did borrow it in that one event, I really enjoyed it. I mean,
yeah,
I took the time and enjoyed fishing out of it, and it was fun, and I'd do it again. But honestly, for one thing, Newport is a great sponsor of mine, and I
yes,
really
great people.
appreciate working with them. And Lord knows if who knows, it would be so cool if maybe one day they got into that bow mount game, but I don't foresee that happening anytime soon just
Yeah.
because they're doing so well with the rear mounted motors.
I mean,
Um,
I love the fact that and you guys fish everywhere, lakes, rivers, shallow, deep. It's one thing when it's those guys that are stuck with that XI3 or bow mount. You get in the Susquehanna or someplace, that's a whole different ball game trying to pull your kayak versus, having all that extra juice of the NK300 to really kind of push you up river, especially when you get in the skinnier water and it's really moving fast. I did get a question from a few different folks. Good friend of mine, Alex on the water, from Twitch. He wants to know, do you have any tournament or on the water rules or mantras that you live by?
Tournament on the water rules or mantras that I live by. I know I do. I just got to think of what they are. Always okay. So one of them, and I've already said this many times, always keep an open mind.
Yep.
Things change, fish change. They change more than we think. I can't tell you how often I've fished in an event and what was working in practice is not just not working. I mean, it's really not working. Like you go from something that produced 20 bites in practice to not getting a single one. And so, I mean, I always make it a point to keep an open mind. And I always make it a point to remember, no matter what stage in the game you're at, how quickly your day can change. This is one of those sports where you can be so incredibly far behind and in 10 minutes suddenly put up a giant bag.
Yeah.
You know, it can just happen that fast. And especially on so many of these amazing fisheries that we have these events on that they're putting us on, you know, it really can happen that fast. And it has happened that fast for me many times on days where things have been really slow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, keep an open mind and just remember that things can change fast. And I guess that lends over to just, you know, maintaining a positive mental outlook on the day, you know. At the end of the day, you know, you just can never count yourself out, you know.
I think
And
that's one of the things I always try to keep in mind, especially when you're getting in late in the day and you're starting to have that. Ooh, it's after lunch. It's tough. There's not. But you know what? I think one of the things I always put in my head is, but any one cast, you can at least go home with the big bass check or catch a new PB. You know, just
that's
anything
exactly
to
right.
keep you kind of in that positive mindset and focused on what you're doing and not, you know, not just giving it up. Because bottom line is we all love to fish, whether it's for money or for whatever, you know, we're still out there just fishing and enjoying, you know, enjoying being on the water too. But that's one thing I love about this community. And that kind of dawns back to something that you said earlier when they talk about the rules of being able to share information. I actually love the fact that our tournament directors get that. And because I don't think that always is real in the boat world, you know, but in our community, it doesn't matter if you're a brand new kayak angler or seasoned veteran. Um, you know, we all share information. We all want everybody to catch some fish. We all want everybody to have a good time. You know, I notice this at every event that I go to. The pros are, you know, they're not too good to talk to the people that are just there to kind of support the sport and, you know, come stargazing. I'll say it. You know, I love hanging around and being around the guys that are best at what we do because we all share that same passion. But I love the fact that we're such an open and giving community, and it's even reflected in our rules where people can, you know, stop and help each other. And I mean, I don't know how many times we've known of people either broke down or ran out of battery or whatever, and the other anglers around them that they're competing against will stop and help and make sure that we're all taken care of. Absolutely love that about the people that we share this passion with.
I agree. I feel extremely blessed to be a part of this particular facet of the sport, like not just fishing, but kayak fishing.
Yeah,
I feel like we have some incredible people involved in our group, and you know, in the grand scheme of things, our group isn't that big when you consider all sports all over the world. But
yeah,
I kind of, to some degree, I kind of like it that way. I love that it's growing because it is, and
yeah,
but I like that every time I show up to one of these events, I typically know quite a few people, and I have a few, you know, I have a lot of hands to shake and friends to hug and whatnot. And honestly, I love being out on the water, even when I'm having a tough day, and you know, running into an old friend and being able to tell them, dude, I'm having a rough day. Like I need like a high five or something just to turn it around. and I've had that happen a time or two, and it's one of the things I really appreciate. I've done a lot of boat events before, and they've all been really fun, and they all have some amazing people as well. However, I can't say that I can pull up to my buddy's boat and give him a high five real quick just for some encouragement. I can't say that I can necessarily do that like I can, in one of our kayak events.
Yeah. What kind of a mindset do you have to keep and maintain to be able to do this like year after year? Because I'm sure is especially for the guys that are, I have a job and I fish these things for fun as a hobby, and there are several of you who it's the other way around. This is what you do. How do you is it like you said, just keeping an open mind or just confidence in your abilities? How do you year after year kind of prep going in, or have you been doing it long enough that it's just like this is what I do?
That's a really good question. For me, I think there's a couple of things to think about. It is in large part, it is what I do. I've set up kind of my life so that I can continue to do this. Of course, I do like I have kind of a freelance travel photography job that allows me to travel and photograph as I'm traveling for tournaments, which is a huge blessing.
Yep.
If y'all know anybody who needs photos, just let me know. Give me a call. I'm willing to help. I got a website too. But anyways, so I've set up my life so I can do it. I'm blessed that I have some great partners that help me out as well. And it's still, it's not always easy. It's definitely not like the most lucrative gig out there or anything like that. But I feel so incredibly blessed that I get to do it as much as I get to do it, and that I've been able to kind of point my life and my lifestyle kind of in that direction and being constantly engulfed in the outdoors. Now, I'm not going to say, there aren't moments that I don't start to get a little burnt out.
Yeah.
Like usually right around August, September, I mean, it starts getting harder and harder to drive 12 and a half, 14, 15 hours to go to a tournament.
Yeah.
And that's where for me, hunting season really plays a big role in my life. I really do enjoy once, it's typically been once the TOC is over. I've really enjoyed just putting my stuff away, my fishing stuff away, and
Yep.
focusing on something else and putting my time and investing it on something else. And in most cases, that's hunting. It's time spent with my family. It's a great many things, and being able to kind of for just a few months out of the year really focus on something else absolutely jacks me up to be ready to fish again in February. I mean, it's crazy what a little break can do, and I'm very, very you can say I'm very strict about making sure that I take that break every year.
Yep.
And every year it's funny. I get a little nervous. I was like, man, I'm gonna be rusty when I get back out there. Like everything's just gonna feel a little funny, right? But I have found that as long as I get out there and I start doing it, I usually get back in the groove pretty quick.
Yeah,
And
that'll work.
and that was certainly the case this year. As I was blessed, and I had a great finish on the Kissimmee chain. I sincerely hope I can keep it going. And I mean, of course, there's a lot of season left, but it would be so cool to be able to make a run at AOI.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's a dream I know for that's the standard that the top of the top really pursue. Now you're going to be heading home. Well, you're home, but the next big one is in your home area. And how are you feeling about? Well, first, let me go ahead and say congrats on qualifying for the return to Knoxville for the Kayak Bass Championship next year. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, that's a long way out. Let's talk about you being, kind of in your home area against a lot of hammers, the top bunch of the bunch here coming up in a few weeks. How are you kind of gearing up and preparing for Lake Fork here with the Bassmaster Kayak Championship?
Honestly, I am preparing by not preparing.
Okay.
um, so I do consider Lake Fork to be about as homey of a lake as a home lake can get. I have spent. I would be shocked if there's anybody in that tournament that spent more time on that lake than I have.
Yeah.
I would be pretty shocked. Now, with that being said, I understand Lake Fork is such an equalizer of a lake. I mean, we see it happen so often where people that have a lot of experience out there can do really, really good, but they can also do really, really bad.
Yeah.
It can just happen out there. And so the reason I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself leading into this event is it's at a time of the year where I can't get too focused on thinking about doing any one thing because our weather patterns here in Texas in March are so volatile.
Yeah.
Like it could snow in March.
Yeah.
Or the fish could be like post spawn. So it could go like either way. You know what I mean? And so I'm trying, once we get, within a couple of weeks of the event, I think I'll have a much better idea of how I want to approach it. But for the moment, I'm trying not to have any preconceived notions on what the fish are going to be doing because
Yeah.
the weather and everything can just change so much in the next month.
Now, do you go hit other lakes just to kind of stay in the fishing groove and stay sharp? Or are you just leaving it alone until right before and then you'll know what it's doing when the time is right?
There's no doubt. I mean, I'm going to be home. I'm going to be here in Fort Worth for a little while. So, yeah, I'll be hitting a lot of lakes
Yeah.
around here and enjoying the amazing fishing that we have here in the pre-spawn. This is my favorite time of the year to fish out here. And so I will definitely be hitting a lot of places and having the ability to hit a lot of lakes around here and in the area will give me a pretty good idea once Lake Fork rolls around, kind of what's going to be going on. But I mean, honestly, Lake Fork has such an abundant amount of resources for people that are coming from out of state to kind of know what's going on. There's so many guides that post really detailed reports that can be extremely helpful if you're coming from out of state. I would I even read some of these reports to get an idea, and they're completely public. They're open to everybody.
Yep.
So I would definitely encourage everybody to take a look and I'll definitely be taking a look myself, but I'm definitely looking forward to hitting some stuff around here because it's about to get really good.
Now, what is the lake around Paris? I guess the newer lake that's supposed to be like the next big bass kind of thing.
That's Lake Bodar.
Bodar. Drew was talking about that this weekend because he's got his event on the Sunday where the boaters are going to be weighing in. He's throwing a kayak adventure series on Bodar, well, in that area, because you can choose from like a bunch of different lakes. But he's just doing like a 1-day shootout kayak adventure series added on at the end of whatever, so that anybody like me who's coming down as a fan, well, at least I have another reason to go fish while I'm down there. So, why not? So I'm going to jump into that as well. For anybody who's going to be down there either fishing the championship or just go into the classic and you're a kayak angler, go check out the kayak adventure series because Drew's holding the tournament there. It's a 1-day, I think like 7 to whatever. Just because you can't get too much kayak fishing, especially if everybody's, the competitors that are traveling across the country, you're there before you're there doing our championship and then the boaters, do their thing. But if you're down there, might be worth hopping into if you want to make a couple extra $100. And but again, that lake was one that he was talking about. That's like a big up and coming thing. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to haul truck and trailer, I may as well, because I plan on following you guys around with the camera and taking pictures and throwing up the drone and kind of do some video to promote our sport and then try to catch some fish when y'all are done. But then again, since I'm down there, how could I not try to catch that bigger than 8-pound bass when I'm in Texas in springtime?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, Bodar is a super cool lake. I would encourage anybody who's around to check that place out. And let me tell you why. I mean, we don't have many opportunities lately. It seems like, they're just not making that many new lakes.
Right.
And this lake is brand new. Some of the trees that are flooded still are dropping acorns.
Oh, wow.
They're still alive.
Yeah.
That's how new the lake is. And it makes for a really unique fishing experience, in my opinion.
Okay.
I've made a few last summer. I made quite a few trips out there, and I really enjoyed fishing out there. Now, don't get the preconceived notion that it's now. I haven't fished it in March yet, so for all I know, it's going to be like incredible in March.
Okay.
When I was there in the summer, it wasn't easy, but my goodness, did I enjoy it! Like
Okay.
the whole fishing experience. Now, I was there when it was 100 and just 100 something degrees out, and the lake was hot. And I mean, I wouldn't have expected the fishing to be good anywhere.
Right.
But even with how hot it was, the fishing wasn't that bad. It was still, I mean, I was able to spend entire days out there over 100 degrees enjoying myself.
Yeah, you gotta love that.
So, I mean, I have no doubt that it's going to set up really well. The fish there are growing insanely fast. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how big they are for how new the lake is. And what makes that lake really special is those fish are they're built a little different right now. They
Okay.
fight insanely hard. Every time you set the hook, I mean, you think you hooked an 8 or 9 pounder and you bring it up, it's like a 16 incher. But like I've seen like several instances of people catching like 19s and 20s that are weighing like well over 5-6 pounds because of the way those fish are built right now. There's an abundance of food, and they're very, very, very healthy out there. So, I mean, I would expect that to be a great experience for anybody who comes in from out of state to experience what it's like to fish on a brand new lake. For as new as the lake is plumb full of fish.
Excellent. Sweet.
Plumb full of fish. I mean, don't go in there thinking, "Oh, this lake's new. It probably doesn't have that many fish in it." No, it's they had the ponds before they even flooded it. The ponds within the lake's watershed were already full of fish. They
Okay.
stocked them before they even flooded it to make sure that the lake had plenty of adult fish before they even started flooding it. So, I mean, the place is it's shocking how many fish are in there. If you turn on your live scope, you're like, oh my goodness, there's fish swimming around everywhere, So, I mean, don't definitely, and also don't, for those that are coming in to fish that event, there's a lot of other really great fisheries on that list, I think.
Yep.
And so don't hesitate to check those out. And what's kind of cool is here in Texas, we got just down the road from that lake, they're building another one right now. So I think in the next 10 to 15 years, Texas is going to have like 4 brand new reservoirs.
Yeah, I love the fact that Texas is smart enough to invest, the Share Lunker program, but they're investing in the sport. I'll tell you, as a disabled veteran, one of the things that floored me is I was down there picking up my son from El Paso when he got out of the Army, and we were driving back across, and we stopped at Fork to, we were going to hop on with a guide, and unfortunately it was when a hurricane was coming through a few years ago. But I went in to get my license, and the guy asked, "Are you disabled vet?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, actually I am." And everything, dude, the dude handed me a full book once he verified my status, deer tags, fishing tag, everything, no cost. I was shocked. I mean,
Yeah,
normally you get like a little discount or something,
that's pretty cool, isn't it?
but I love Texas. I've always loved Texas. I love everything about Texas. 3 of my kids are born there, and they yell at me all the time for leaving, even though my daughter lives back in, Dallas now. But it's just but I absolutely love the fact that they take care of folks like that too. But yeah, the fishing is just incredible. I so can't wait to get down there. I'm probably going to spend more time down there on leave this year just to go fish, not worrying about tournaments, but just to go chase big fish, just because.
So you're going to
Everywhere
be
you go
down
in
there in
Texas,
March?
huh?
You're going to be down there in March around the Classic?
Oh, I'm coming. Yeah, I'm going to be working with the. I'm going to be working with Nick at the Fish Texas Kayak Trailers booth. He's actually building my next side by side, and it's going to be one of the ones that's on display at the Classic.
Awesome.
So I'm bringing down the one that I currently have, and then I'm getting a side by side so I can haul that XTR and that PWR wherever I go.
Very
But yeah, I'll be doing that. So I'll be coming down for your guys' event, and then obviously be there as a fan for the boaters. And then I'm going to fish Drew's event just because I'm down there. Because how can I not go hop on that lake and see what I can find? Just because I've never been there before.
awesome.
So yeah, looking forward to it. I'll be staying.
Well,
Oh, yeah, I actually be staying at Nick's house there in Glen Rose, so it'll be
oh
fun.
man, that's great because right there, right around where Nick's going to be, right around where Nick is at, there's a lot of great fishing. So you're
Yeah,
going to be right in the middle of a lot of good stuff. And you put your time in at that time of the year,
yeah.
crazy things are bound to happen out here.
Oh,
So
dude, I love the opportunity. It's just like I can't not do it just because. I mean, I love everything about this too. But again, I'm gonna come down and film and put up the drone and do some photos, and
awesome.
bought me a new camera. Got to take some pics and all that good stuff too. But
Awesome.
yep, looking forward to it. But again, I just want to capture following some of you guys around on the water doing your thing. Kind of, we see Jeff Little do it in the past with some of the guys, and I want to kind of, be able to do some of that for the guys that are really out there trying to win a title. It's really cool to see. And you did pretty good last year's championship. Am I thinking right?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I really left loving that lake a lot. So I'm very excited to go back.
Was that a surprise for you? Did you think you were going to do that well, or?
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I mean, honestly, I had a good practice in that
Yeah.
event. I had a good practice, but for me, typically, if I have a good practice, I better watch out because things. It's like for me, it's backwards. If I have a bad practice, I can keep an open mind and kind of do well in the tournament. Sometimes when I have a good practice, I get so hung up on what I did in practice that sometimes it's a lot harder to keep an open mind.
Yep.
So that's kind of, I feel like it's one of my strengths to be able to kind of put that aside sometimes, but still, I mean, it's crazy how difficult that can really be.
Yeah.
Um, and on 10 Killer, thankfully, the weather pattern didn't change too much. And I was able to apply a lot of what I learned in practice. I actually caught one of my biggest smallmouth ever in practice. It was 21 and 3/4 out there. And golly, that was so cool. That
Oh,
was
dude.
so cool to catch a smallmouth that big. And I didn't realize I lived so close to smallmouth that big because that lake's
Yeah, that's
only like
crazy.
4.5, maybe 5 hours from me, which for me, that's, for great smallmouth fishing, that's pretty close,
Yeah,
you know?
that's like for me to go to Dale Hollow. I mean, that's and I'm only 5.5 hours from St. Clair. Have never been to either one,
Really?
but we're gonna change that.
Good. Good.
Excellent, excellent. How many inches do you think it's gonna take to win the championship? Because you guys
Ooh,
put up a monster bunch of bags down there at Kissimmee. What do you think it's gonna be like at Fork?
man, it seems like these tournaments are getting more and more competitive every year.
Yep.
I I've said it many times and it hasn't happened yet, right? It hasn't happened yet. But I know very soon it's going to happen where somebody, I'm not saying it's going to happen this time, but I'm telling you, it's going to happen. The stars are going to align on Lake Fork one day for somebody. I don't know who, but for somebody. And somebody's going to bust a 110-inch plus stringer. It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying this, it's a great time of year for that to happen to somebody right now.
Yep.
There is no doubt. But if I had to guess, I gotta imagine if I had to take a pick for like the winning stringer, I would probably pick right around, I guess it's 3 days. No, it's two.
2 days.
It's
Yep.
still 2 days. I would say right around that 200-inch mark.
Yep.
would be pretty fair. I do think there's going to be a lot of people over 180 inches.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great event in that regard. I mean, it's even if we catch it and we get a snowstorm, we're going to catch it right in that pre-spawn time, which is great. And if we don't get a snowstorm, they're going to be probably on beds.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you'll probably be able to throw a frog around and catch them. I mean, who knows? And either way, it's going to be great fishing. So I'll stand by that 200, and I'm not gonna. And I'm also gonna say it wouldn't. I'm standing by 200, but it would not shock me to see like a 210.
Okay.
But you know, the way it goes sometimes, even a lot of times when somebody goes out and catches 110 inches, it's very hard to back that up.
That 2 days in a row is just something. I mean, I would love and hate to be the person who's the day one leader, because it's like, how am I going to do that again?
Right.
But I mean, as we see in this sport often, it's consistency. What's the biggest catch bass you've ever caught out of fork?
The biggest. So I'll just go ahead and say it. I'm going to brag on myself a little bit. I did have one day out there several years ago in the middle of the summer where I caught an 115 plus inch bag out there. One day. Yep. But the biggest fish I've ever caught, I've caught four. I'm pretty sure I've caught 4 overs on that lake, which is fish over 24 inches.
Yep.
And the biggest one being one that I caught during a tournament. It was like 20. I'd have to look up the picture. It was over 25 inches in fat, and I put it on my scale, and it did not say 10 pounds, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, how is this not a 10-pounder?
Yeah.
I'm blown. This thing's 25 and a half inches and built like a blimp. Like,
it's like, how are you not?
Exactly. And it wasn't 10 pounds. It was just under it. But that's the biggest fork bass that I've ever caught.
Okay. Now you've caught 1 10-pounder, or were you at 2? Okay. I remember seeing one on somebody's video.
Yeah.
Some random lady on the internet. But
yeah, pretty random.
pretty random. You know, we all know who she is. But so 2 over 10. Were they both in Texas?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yep. I caught one of them on Possum Kingdom. And one of them on Eagle Mountain during a KBF event.
Wow. That's incredible. I couldn't even fathom it in an event, let alone, but yeah, 10-pounder. Yeah, maybe someday. All right, brother. I am not going to keep you. I always like to keep these about an hour, but I certainly appreciate you taking the time to come on the show tonight. And man, it's always a blessing to be able to just share time with awesome people and hear the stories. And I love this, and I love this about our sport too. And I, like I said, super appreciate you coming on tonight.
I appreciate you, my friend, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yes, sir. Yeah. After, see what happens, throw out them good vibes.
Yep.
We'll be pulling for you. Cause like I said, there's a lot of good people that folks, love to support. And you honestly are just one of the best people in this sport. And I don't throw that around to everybody, because guys like you and our good friend Marty Hughes is in the chat, and, Kayak Jack is the man, the myth and the legend. Love having the folks around too. But again, brother, I appreciate you taking the time to come on. Thanks for everybody watching the live. Thanks for everybody listening to the podcast. As always, get outside when you can and make some memories. One cast at a time.
Thank you.